Go. All right. Hi, guys. Andy Kennedy here. Most of you know me. I am in Eastern Tennessee, which is new for us relatively. We moved here about a year and a half ago now and purchased a 40-acre farm and are slowly still building our home. We live in a yurt, so that is what is here behind me. So I'll just continue to chat as I let my internet catch up. It looks like it's a little unstable, so that would be another reason to record so that we get a clean recording. So for those of you that don't know me, I have been a longtime member, 9-year member of our healthy living community. And so a lot of the people who will be on today are in that community. I may ask you guys to chime into the chat, but as we're welcoming guests, please in the chat, put where you're tuning in from and who invited you. And I'll ask you to be active in the chat. And if you're watching this recording, you can put that in the comments of the recording as well. Would love to see where you're tuning in from and who invited you. This will be right about 30 minutes. I'm going to get rolling here pretty quick, and we'll keep it mindful of everybody's time. So we'll be right at 30 minutes. And as I've said a couple of times, but for everyone that's just coming in, 2 things. If you can't unmute yourself, that's my fault because I wanted a clean recording in the Facebook group. So put your questions in the chat. And then as you'll see, people are tuning in. They're putting into the chat where they're tuning in from and who invited them. So feel free to drop a name. So I'm glad that I see some people, mutual friends invited you, Mary. I see Tala's name there. Thank you. And Sophie, you might have seen it in that one or in the Eastern Tennessee Homesteading group. I don't know if I promoted it in the Farm Free group, but I'm glad you're in there too. That's pretty cool. Let's see, making sure you use the chat. So if I've said that already, I know you've heard that multiple times, but use the chat today for questions. I'll either answer them here or I'll answer them in the Facebook group, and I'll put the link to the Facebook group in at the end here. I'll put it in now too. And then that way, if for some reason I lose the copy paste by the end of this, we can just repost it. So thank you guys all for coming. I'm really excited to just share this experience with you. It's been a really fun experiment for me to continue to develop, and it's been a 5-year journey for the gluten-free sourdough for me, but also with gluten-free, it's been about I think 15 years now that I've been gluten-free. So still letting people in. Welcome, guys. I see you, Diana and Darla and Lisa. Welcome. I'm glad you guys are all here. If you can't unmute, I'm going to keep repeating myself in the beginning here. If you can't unmute yourself, it's my fault. We want a clean recording in both in the Facebook group and on YouTube for us. So in the chat, please put where you're from and who invited you. So we've got a good record of that. And then if you are a partner with our healthy living community, please put JP in the chat. So I know how many of you are already partners with our healthy living community, whole food concentrate community. And I'll briefly tell my story really quick with that and what this Live with Vitality collective that I'm wearing is. That's okay, Lori. I see them. So I have participants up. So I'll keep letting them in. So if you're just coming in, put in the chat where you're tuning in from and who invited you. And then if you are a partner with our whole food company, please put JP in the chat. If you don't know what that means, reach back out to the person that invited you. But my story really quick is that I was struggling with my health. I was gluten-free at this point, dairy-free. I had cut out so many different things. I can't even list them all. And I had symptoms that ranged from brain fog to really, really irritable gut, not really getting along with anything that I put in it anymore. And a friend of mine told me about whole food concentrates, and I decided, okay, I'm going to add that in. My dear friend Lori, dripped on me for a very long time. I didn't quite get it at first because I'm stubborn like that. And I was very strict on my diet. I will say that. That's where this whole gluten-free thing came from. I was very, very strict because I had to be. And when I learned that I could just fix my gut with a couple of small things, I was so happy. So fast forward, I'm not on any medications or other supplements or all of the many things that I was taking. I can eat most of the food that I couldn't eat before, including a little bit of gluten here and there. But honestly, I try to still stay very gluten-free because it does still trigger me. And gluten-free is part of our 10-day reset. We do this every month as a healthy living community together. And that 10 days, during that 10-day period, we cut out gluten in addition to cutting out dairy and caffeine and alcohol and sugar. And so if you are listening along and participating in the chat, if one of those things, well, first of all, if you've done one of our 10-day healthy resets before, type 10 in the chat so I can see how many people have done that before. And then if you have done that before, nice, here they start coming in, Mary, Diana, nice. Type 10 in the chat if you've done our 10-day reset. And if you have, what was the hardest thing for you to give up? For me, that was caffeine. And sometimes that trickles back into my life. It's still a hard thing for me to give up. Those 5 things that we give up during that 10-day reset are caffeine, sugar, alcohol, gluten, and dairy. And then we add things in too. We add a mindfulness practice. We add moving every day. We add our whole food concentrates, both macro and micronutrition. We add focusing on sleep and drinking a lot of water. So cutting 5 things out and adding 5 things in. And we just started that for our monthly today. I see another person with coffee being a hard thing to cut out. Dairy, yep, that too. And your ice cream habit that we just heard about an hour ago, Lori. Yeah, I got one of those too sometimes. Not really with the ice cream anymore, but let me tell you the weight I gained when I went to Italy and ate gelato like it was going out of style. So now I'm just gonna kind of really quickly talk about why gluten-free sourdough. So thanks for putting all of that in the chat, guys. So first, let me back up and say in 2018, a friend of mine in our whole food company said, sourdough gluten is not the same. You can eat sourdough if you're gluten-free because it won't bother you. And I said, I don't know if I believe that, but I'll try it because I really missed baking, really missed, bread and all of that stuff. And I had been off of that stuff for a long time. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And I took home her very ancient, from Ireland, I think, even like mother, and fed it with King Arthur flour, which is what she said I had to do, which is the flour she said I had to use, I mean. And then sure enough, I was so excited. It was bubbling, was doing all the right things. I followed her instructions to the T, letting it rise, all that good stuff. And I'm so sensitive and aware that I can pretty much touch something and know if it's going to trigger me. And so I put my hand on that hot loaf of bread when it came out, and I was like, oh no, like this is not going to agree with my body. I knew it. And I took a bite of it anyway. And just immediate, like, bummer. So I called up Lori and I said, you need to come get this out of my house. I'm going to eat this whole thing. It smells amazing. And she came and picked it up and gave it to her husband and son because she doesn't eat gluten either. So at least it went to a good home. And I started my quest immediately after that because I thought someone has to have done this. And what's funny is I hadn't searched gluten-free sourdough until this afternoon. This was 2018 that I developed this recipe. And I should have known that 5 years later, there's a lot more out there, which is great. When I was searching, there was nothing out there. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, but I definitely had to search high and low, and I did months of research. So another little game, let's play. Type 1 in the chat if you've baked sourdough bread. And then type 3 in the chat if you've baked gluten-free sourdough bread. And I'll see probably not very many threes there, although I'll be excited to see. And that's gluten-free sourdough, not just gluten-free, because I'm sure a lot of you have baked gluten-free. Gluten, it's the things that I say, about bread, right? It's sticky. right? You spill flour on the counter, it's hard to get up. It's sticky, it's tacky, it's doing that in your system. And you know, it rises, right? The yeast and all of the other ingredients that go into making bread, you know, expand. So that expands in you as well. So your gluten-free sourdough bread is not going to expand as much as your regular sourdough is. It's also not going to stick to you, and it's not going to cause inflammation. So the other piece that they say about sourdough in general is that fermentation process, you know, makes the nutrients more bioavailable. It eats up that gluten, like I said, so that if you're gluten intolerant, you can have it. I found that I could not have it, so I find that that's not true. And fermentation is not, with sourdough, it's not the same as like sauerkraut, right? You want to be eating some of those really good fermented foods on a regular basis to help your gut. Sourdough, I feel, for me at least, the jury's still out on that, on it, you know, really repairing your gut microbiota. It's not the same as sauerkraut in that camp, right? So so fast forward, I did a bunch of research. If you haven't seen the blog post, I put that in the workbook. So you can download the workbook on both the Facebook event and the Facebook group. There's 2 links there. The event is something you can share. The group is something that you can invite to. And that's where all the recordings will be housed. The blog post that I have, I definitely, if you're into information, there's, as I am, so many resources in there. I think it's like 15 different links that you can look and see other recipes or tweak it. So as we talk throughout the week, I'll refer to it a couple of times, because that's kind of my primary resource bank right now, is that blog post. And it's andie'sideafactory.blogspot.com. And then I think it's like the 3rd or 4th post down. That's the sourdough one. I haven't posted to there in a long time because, yeah, it's a little hard for me to blog right now with everything that's going on in our world. So the starter, that's where we're at. So if you got your rice flour already, that's what we're going to use today. Is it doesn't have to be Bob's Red Mill. It doesn't have to be brown. It can be white rice. I just got this from Amazon, and I'm psyched because it's organic and gluten-free, dairy-free, all of that label, GMO-free, got all the good stuff on the back, nut-free, kosher-free. So I'm excited to try this. This is, I just got this in the mail, and it's pure brown rice flour, whole grain, ground up, super fine. I've had people ask me if they can grind some of these. So for instance, if you get sorghum or oat flour, or oats rather, in the whole form, you just can put them in your coffee grinder or your nut grinder and grind them super small. If you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. I see a couple of questions coming down the pipe here. So let's see. The website was Andie's, ANDYS, ideafactory.blogspot.com. So if anybody can type fast, they can put that in there. The starter, yes, Shanette, I would say the starter has to be rice flour. So I wanted to also briefly talk about the 1-for-1. So you can buy Bob's Red Mill or King Arthur 1-for-1 gluten-free. It's going to have all the different types of flours in there, and the xanthan gum and salt and all of that stuff. Thank you, Zia, one of our fast typers there. Appreciate you, girl. Glad you're here. And what you need for the starter is the simplest thing you can have, right? So I think the oat flour I haven't tried this with the oat flour. I don't think the sorghum or the arrowroot flour would do this. And I have tried this with coconut flour. And that I actually talked about that in the blog post as well, that I started with whole wheat and then those 2 as a starter to just see what those 2 performed at, you know, in it, like comparison with the regular flour starter, because I knew what that looked like. I knew how much it bubbled. Every time I fed it, it kind of fermented and bubbled up even further, and you had to divide and add. Every time you did it, it expanded. The coconut flour did not do that. The rice flour did. So I would say start with the rice flour. And And if your store doesn't have it, just get it off of Amazon. This one, I literally ordered this one on Saturday and it got here today. So that's a little bit about the flours and fermentation. When you're doing your starter, it's super easy. You just take an equal amount of, and this is, I believe, a 1/4 cup scoop. It's from my complete bag, because we don't have a full kitchen set up here yet in the yurt. So I just have, like I showed you this morning in the live I did, a wide mouth jar. I'm going to put 2 of those scoops in. There we go. So 2 scoops. You can see that in there. And then I'm going to pour, I have this cold water. Did a little more research since last I posted. So I'm going to put 2 of these into the jar with the rice flour. And I'll talk about cold water in just a sec. And then you just stir it to blend it, mix it, whatever. Stir it really good so you can kind of see it's like milky. And I can feel on the bottom, feel it all dissolving. I really don't want it to settle. So you're going to stir it this first day there, and you want it it's kind of soupy, but it's thick, right? So you'd want it kind of thick. And that was 2 scoops of water and 2 scoops of rice flour. It doesn't matter what size your scoop is, so long as it's the same size. So I would do 1/4 cup or a 1/2 cup of rice flour and a 1/2 cup of water, and it's just cold water. And so what's interesting is in the live that I did this morning, I was like, my mom taught me whenever you're baking to use cold water. So I'm just programmed, use cold water. And I went and looked at, Googled, of course, why do we use cold water? And it's actually better if you're talking about something that's bonding with gluten or yeast, because the cold water slows that process. If you're rising yeast, for instance, which we aren't, and we aren't using gluten. So you don't necessarily need to use the cold water, but I still would, because you want the process slow. You don't want to heat this flour. It does have some of those thickening properties in it anyway, right? Because it's rice. So, yeah, and it's mine's already starting to thicken up a little bit. So again, it doesn't have to be brown rice. It can be white rice flour. It doesn't have to be Bob's Red Mill. It can be this pure organic kind. It can be King Arthur makes a rice flour. I think there are a lot of companies that are making rice flour. And I refrigerated it, Nesco, but you don't necessarily have to. I was just on my live this morning laughing at myself because we literally do not have tap water yet in the yurt. So if you have a tap, you have cold water. I don't, right? So, and if you're in Arizona, your tap water probably isn't cold, right? But if you're in Steamboat or somewhere in New England, your tap water probably is cold. So I try and use cold, and that's something, like I said, that I learned from my mom. She put it in a jar, she put it in the fridge, and then when it was time to use it, she would use it. She even did that with the flour. She would chill the flour too. So you could do that, mess around with it. I mean, that's what's fascinating to me about baking, is that it's science. And so sometimes, the combinations work, sometimes they don't. And it might be because the water wasn't chilled or the flour wasn't chilled, right? So you're going to feed your starter, just looking at the time, we're doing good. You're going to feed your starter once again before you go to bed. So whenever you feed your starter, it's equal parts water, equal parts flour. So another little scoop, like 1/4 cup, or it could even be a tablespoon. So you don't want to fill this whole jar in the week, right? You can, but you don't want to, because you want it to continue to ferment. So tomorrow I'll add another little scoop, and then the next day, and then the next day, right? So in 4 or 5 days, you're going to fill this jar, and you'll see it'll start to bubble. And if it actually does come too much up into the jar, just pour some of it out into another jar, and then you've got 2 starters. You'll only be using about 1/4 cup of the starter for this recipe on Friday. So when it comes time to use it, you don't need that much this time. but maybe you like it. And you'll be making multiple recipes with it. So having a lot is okay as well. Sally, did you put the mother in the jar? So this is the mother. I'm literally making the mother from scratch right now. This is the starter. So there is no mother. And you know, from using this from scratch, the longer that you feed this, they're equal sizes. So it doesn't matter what size you use. I used this little scoop and I did 2 of them. It's probably, this scoop is 2 or 3 tablespoons. So it's probably a 1/4 cup, maybe a little less. But it doesn't matter so long as they're equal. You could do 1 tablespoon and 1 tablespoon, 1/4 cup and 1/4 cup. And then when you feed it once a day. That's right, Sally, we are making our own. So, and trust me, it will work. It doesn't, you don't need to go to Ireland to get the mother. So tonight, yes, put 1 more scoop in just to feed it before bedtime, leave it on the counter, leave it partially, covered. So I like this jar. This jar is one of our old honey jars. But I like to use like a ball jar, so I can just put the flat ball jar lid on top and leave like a little tiny bit of air, so that because we have, you know, furry noses that get into the counters at night here, and I don't mean rodents, I mean the ones that we choose to feed, that we have adopted, you know, so they like to get into everything. So you don't want to put it in the fridge, you don't want it someplace hot either, so someplace cool. Yes, tonight 1 scoop of flour, 1 scoop of water, and then tomorrow 1 scoop of flour, 1 scoop of water. The next day, that's tomorrow is Tuesday, so Wednesday, a scoop of each. Thursday, a scoop of each, and then Friday we'll bake together. So for Friday, you want to make sure that you have all of those ingredients that I listed, which are the other flours. We're meeting at 2 p.m. Eastern, not 4. The recordings will all be in that same Facebook group, as well as YouTube. I will put them on YouTube for those who are not on Facebook. And however, if you have questions and you're not in the Facebook group, you'll have to just message me directly, or put them below the YouTube comments, because I allow comments on Facebook. I mean, on YouTube. But if you have questions, I would love to see them. I would love to see activity in that Facebook group. I would love to see, you know, your pictures of your starter, and yeah. So let me see if I've got everything. It is a labor of love. This does take time, so be patient. No need to put it in a dark place. Cover it, but not tightly. Yep, exactly. And it's also dust, you know, I mean, you don't want particles in there. I would not try anything other than rice flour right now. This is, I'm going to teach you this recipe that I know works. I would practice this recipe and then start tweaking it. Because I don't know what nut flours work. I haven't tried. I tried everything under the sun when I developed this 5 years ago. I haven't tried everything under the sun in the last year or 2. But I would start with what works and then tweak that a little bit before I started adding in the nut flours. You can, like I said in the beginning, go to that blog post and see the other things that I've tried, see the other recipes that I've listed. Google it yourself too, maybe, and see. All right, let me close participants so I can see all the chat here. Yes, Darla, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, 1 scoop of flour, 1 scoop of water. Doesn't matter what time of day. You could also feed it twice a day. That's another faster way to like build your mother. You could feed it twice a day. But I like to let it ferment and, you know, kind of watch it. Oh, thank you. So looks like Zia was filling everybody in for me because she's amazing. Take your time, set intentions. What I like to do is pray into this. So, and set good intentions into it. My version of praying is like mantras and good energy and white light and asking my angels, you know, but not just right for like a good sourdough, right? Setting the intention that this is something that I'm going to eat. right? So I want to put love and health. And if it's for somebody else, I want to put love and health in there for them. So I always like to include that because I think we move through life so quickly, we forget to slow down and set intention and put intention into our food. And the food always turns out better when we do that, right? So you can set a good intention for a nice, fluffy sourdough bread, but I would put some more stuff in there too. Your homework is to get those other flours. It doesn't matter the brand, but we have arrowroot. I don't actually even have them all. So arrowroot and sorghum and oat flour. So I'm waiting on my oat flour and then xanthan gum. And I'll talk a little bit more about the xanthan gum next week. Or a Friday, I mean, because, or maybe it might even be Monday. I'm not sure when I'll work that in yet, but yeah, I do have trepidation around using too much of the gums, right? Because then you're still creating that stickiness that gluten has. But I have not found a recipe without gum. So we'll talk about that too. And if you've got one, please, please, please share that. No, Sally, you cannot use the 1-to-1 because 1-to-1 has all of those flours in it, plus the xanthan gum. You want to create a starter, a mother, if you will, from a very basic ingredient. It's going to ferment. It's not going to ferment if it's got all those different things in it. It's got shelf life stuff in it, right? If it's 1-to-1. I mean, find me a really, really clean 1-to-1 ingredient list that doesn't have multiple gums in it. And I'll tell you, maybe it'll ferment, but if it's built for shelf life, it's probably not going to ferment. All right. I think we're good on not for the mother, for baking flour. No, Sally, I would still try. I have tried that also. I would still try, like I said, with the nut flours, I would still try this recipe and then maybe try your 1-to-1. Because I did not get the 1-to-1 to work for this. So, more power to you if you can, but I could not. So I just want to wrap it up with, if you don't know about the Live with Vitality Collective, that's our team in our whole food community. And we're on all the socials under Live with Vitality Collective. We post a lot of things every week and every month. And this is day 1 of our 10-day reset. So if you don't know what the 10-day reset is, reach out to the person who invited you, because that is a really fun experience on really having a healthy look at your kitchen and your lifestyle. So give us a shout, follow us. And if you want to share this, please do. I would love to see our very enthusiastic, holistic community using a gluten-free sourdough for all of our sourdough parties. So please do share the love. And thank you guys all for coming. And I'm sorry you can't unmute yourselves, but yeah, if you have questions, come into the Facebook group. It is being recorded, so it'll be put in that Facebook group. Oh, and let me put that link in here for all of you. There is the Facebook group. So save that. And let me save the chat so I have that. Where are you? I lost my mouse. It's the weirdest thing. I have no mouse right now. Luckily, it's a touch screen. Okay, saved chat. Thanks, guys, for joining. So much love to our community. Appreciate you guys for being here and wanting to learn about gluten-free. Oh yeah, look at that. It's already. So you definitely want to mix it a lot. It starts to turn into a little bit of a science experiment, cement-wise. But keep stirring it multiple times a day. Doesn't have to be every hour, but maybe 3 or 4 times a day. Give it a stir. All right, guys. Thank you.